Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has addressed the United Nations Security Council accusing Russia of the worst war crimes since World War II. President Zelenskyy says civilians have been murdered and claimed Russian tanks have crushed people for pleasure. He's called for those responsible to be tried in an international court and for Russia to be expelled from the Security Council. Otherwise, he says, the council is useless. Gruesome images of bodies lying in the street have generated condemnation worldwide.
Any war is a crime, but there are some rules for leading a war. And in relation to the civilian population, the Russian horde has in fact demonstrated that they were deliberately killing. They actually got a green light on their safari from Putin. They actually were shooting down the Ukrainian nation, Ukrainian people. Therefore, I have no other term to qualify that, other than genocide.
So more than 7 million people have been displaced by the war in Ukraine. Drone footage from Mariupol shows residents waiting in long queues for humanitarian aid, with people still only able to leave on foot or by private car. Recent efforts to organise mass evacuations have failed. NATO's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said Russia was likely to launch a new offensive in the next few weeks.
In the coming weeks, we expect a further Russian push in the eastern and southern Ukraine to try to take the entire Donbass and to create a land bridge to occupied Crimea. So this is a crucial phase of the war.
But Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has accused the West of trying to derail negotiations between Moscow and Kiev by fuelling what he calls hysteria over civilian killings. Moscow has labelled the allegations fake and a monstrous forgery without any evidence.
In recent days, the propaganda machine of the West and Ukraine has been working purely to fuel the hysteria over the video that was filmed, as we understand, by the Ukrainian military, by the security services in the town of Bucha in Kiev region. We're inclined to think that the reason is the intention to derail the negotiations with Ukraine. Moreover, to do it at the moment when it began to gleam, as if it was not too bright yet.
So, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has outlined this list of alleged Russian atrocities. He's addressed the UN overnight. North America correspondent Carrington Clark has the latest from Washington.
He addressed the United Nations Security Council via video link from Ukraine, and it was a searing description of what he says has been uncovered by Ukrainian forces since the Russian retreat from territory around the capital of Kiev. He himself says he has seen much of the evidence and says that it's clear that Russian troops have committed war crimes in Ukraine. He describes horrific scenes of civilians both being raped and murdered by Russian forces. The evidence of that he's seen the evidence of rape and murder, as well as children being massacred across the country. And he says that the United Nations must take action against those who should be held responsible.
The Russian military and those who gave them orders must be brought to justice immediately for war crimes in Ukraine. Anyone who has given orders and carried out them by killing our people will be brought before the tribunal.
We've seen both the Secretary of Defence here in the United States and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff addressing a House committee. There were some heated moments where Republicans in particular pushed the Secretary of Defence on what the US had failed to do in stopping Russia's invasion, but the Secretary of Defence says that it is only because of US support that Ukraine has been able to defend itself so well against Russian aggression. But we did hear from the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that's Mark Milley. He suggests that the United States should look at creating new bases in the eastern part of Europe. So these are the countries that are at most at risk of future Russian aggression, he says. This is a contentious point, though, and we are seeing the Secretary of State of the United States meeting with other NATO foreign leaders in Brussels, and the enlargement of NATO or the repositioning of NATO forces across Europe is a very contentious point. But today we're hearing that the US is at least open to that possibility of new bases in the eastern flank.
Carrington Clark there in Washington, and you can follow our coverage of the crisis in Ukraine online. The ABC webpage has a live blog and a timeline of events with reports from our correspondents on the ground. You can find it at news.abc.net.au.